I met her the very first day at Howard University. My dad and mom were driving me here, and we were walking through the door, and I see this very beautiful lady just standing at the desk, talking to the guy who's, having people sign up. So it was day one, we introduced ourselves. I would always tease her and tell her, I should take you out. And she said, nah. But we didn't start dating until I had actually graduated from college. And I remember it as if it was yesterday. I was with a good friend of mine. We were walking downtown, and she said, well, you always talk about, Sissy Beverly. Why don't you ask her out? I said, well, you know what? The next time I see her, I'm going to ask her out. And she turned a corner. I just saw it. We looked at each other. We're like, okay, you got to ask her out now. She literally turned. There was no way. She turned a corner, and we started laughing. And I said, you know what? We should go out. And it started. That was it. She was a really good mom. She was always even. She made sure our children were balanced. She did what you expect parents to do, and that's to make sure that children took their education serious. But she also made sure they were good human beings. She never was too high or too low. It was always even, and it was amazing to see how she did it. My wife was always directionally challenged. That was the only, of all the marvelous things she did, for a person who always drove around DC, she could get lost at a drop of a hat. But she was getting lost a lot more. And so the kids and I were kind of teasing her, and we said, well, we'll get you a GPS. But really what started to get us to worry is all of our children have gone to the same high school, from the oldest to the youngest. And there's only, we have the same route where we get there. And one time we were at a function for President Obama, and she got lost going to Suitland High School. And I just couldn't, I couldn't believe that she would actually get lost. She eventually found it, but the fact that she was lost. And then from there, it became even more evident, from losing her keys to not knowing how to get to the metro station in Cheverly, which is literally, 10 minutes from our house. But with all those things happening, what I did was I had a good friend of ours who's a doctor, who's my doctor, and I told him, and he said, well, you need to get her in to have somebody test her. Took her down to George Washington. They ran a battery of tests. She was smart enough to be able to get through the test fine. And so I went back to him and I said, well, it seems like she's okay. And for 2 years, he insisted that we continue to go back and test. It was February 2010. As usual, we had an appointment with her to see a neurologist, and he starts to ask her questions. What did it for us was he said, well, what are your children's names? And she looked at him in a way of like, I can't believe you're asking me these crazy questions. And she, of course, named the children. He said, when were they born? What are their birthdays? And she couldn't answer. And the doctor turned to me and said, yeah, she has, early onset. I didn't tell the girls because I didn't know how to tell them. I told my son, but what I would tell the girls is, your mommy's having problems, but it's gonna be okay. My son, who convinced me I had to tell the girls, which was the most difficult conversation you could ever have. I went to the kids, as I do, and we had a family meeting, and I said, okay, here are our options. We can just let people speculate as to what was going on, and people were saying she's depressed. We could tell them it's a family issue and just ignore them, or we can tell people. And, I have to say that my option was that we don't tell anybody, tell them it's personal, and we just, rally ourselves around it and we deal with it just like that. It's none of their business. But they were the ones who actually were better. They were the ones that said, well, we can't we can't, advocate or do anything if people don't know. And I don't know which one said it, but one of them said, we're not ashamed of her. She's mommy. We're not ashamed of this. And we just want to tell people, and that way we can help. And that's what did it. That's what allowed us to go out and to talk about it, because they understood something I didn't at the time. And that was, you can't really help find a cure and make sure families don't go through what we're going through without talking about it. For almost 35 years, she has done everything in the world for me to get me where I am, to get our children where they are. She raised them. And if I did this for another 35, 40 years, I could never repay what she has poured into us. We decided as a family that we would do anything we can and go anywhere and give any of our time to help, so another family doesn't have to go through what we've gone through, and that we can make it better. So I'm pleased to be honored, but more importantly, I think for me, it's the work that you all are doing. That's really God's work.